G'day everybody, I am the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, and this is a short video listing 7 reasons why, if you're a writer, you should be writing short fiction. There are vague guidelines as to what makes a novel versus what makes a novella versus what makes a short story. You can go even smaller into flash fiction, also sometimes called napkin fiction or microfiction. Google the requirements of each format and you'll find a bunch of different page counts and dozens of people arguing that their definition is correct. None of that really matters. A short story is more about style than page count. A short story isn't a shortened story, it's a sliver of a larger sequence of events. We are acutely aware that events occurred before the short story, and others will transpire after the fact, but it is what happens in the short few thousand words that matters to the readers. Short stories are great practice for writing and growing as a writer, and I encourage everyone to write them as often as possible. Sure, your 10-book galaxy-spanning epic is what you really want to write, it's the magic bullet that'll send you to superstardom, but until that happens, you should consider some short fiction. There are a bunch of benefits in engaging with writing short stories. I've come up with 7 of them. If you can think of any others, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Reason number 1, and probably the most important on the whole list, is that short stories are great practice in not just writing, but in crafting stories. These are 2 very different things. Anyone can sit down and write. Not necessarily write well, but they can write if they can write. It's easy to forego planning your novel and simply start pantsing an idea, just writing as far as you can until the wheels come off. But that usually requires even more time to fix it after the fact. Short stories present a great opportunity to plan, even just in your head, a beginning, middle and end, a whole narrative, a complete tale that tells a clearly defined story. While novels and short stories are very different creatures, I would posit that writing 20 short stories would teach you more about the craft than writing one 20-chapter book. You write a 20-chapter book and you've got one story. You write 20 stories and you've got 20 stories. There's still a market for short stories. Stephen King still releases a collection of short stories every few years. Despite them being less profitable, by his own admission, he recognises that writing a short story exercises different creative muscles. It forces you to be succinct and concise. One way to extend yourself even further, which you want to do because you want to be the best writer you can be, right, is to set a word or page count for yourself. This works especially well in comic books. I was working on some short stories for an anthology that never got off the ground, big surprise, and the page limit was 6 pages per story. You have to get real creative to fit anything of meaning into 6 pages. Your writing needs to get real lean, you need to trim all the fat. You don't have space for a single wasted panel or word balloon. Give yourself a word or page limit for your short story and see how merciless you get. See how lean you cut your prose, the way your brain has to figure out the sharpest and most powerful way to say something in the time you have left. You do that for a while and then you see how that sharpness, that immediacy transfers over to your long-form stories. See how punchy and powerful they are when you're writing like every word actually matters. Short stories also allow you to write hard-hitting stories, stories of sharp, clear black and white. These stories resonate. Subverted expectations are still in this postmodern world, but people in general prefer it when their expectations are met. I honestly believe we're at the point where the subverted expectation has become the expectation. I'm honestly more surprised when characters don't betray each other, or when the hero survives the final battle. You want to write something that people connect with, something that keeps them thinking long after they've closed their book or their browser? Short stories allow you to do that. Reason number 2 is that short stories are less commitment. Short stories are a great vehicle for those ideas and concepts that don't necessarily have the legs to be a full-length novel, either because the conceit works best on a smaller scale or shorter time frame, or because extra pages before and after the action would be superfluous. Not every story or idea is worth writing a full novel about. I remember in high school my writing teacher challenged me to write something outside of my comfort zone, which at that point mostly included zombies and cyborgs. He gave me a wedding as a topic. I wrote a story about a mafia hitman hiding inside a wedding cake who burst out and gunned down the bride with an Uzi. That's definitely not worth a whole novel. The story wouldn't have been any better if I detailed how the hitman got the job, organised his guns and gear for the hit, located the bakery and the wedding reception and then snuck inside in the cake. The whole point of the story was him bursting from the cake. What happened before that didn't really matter. What happened a month, week or even a day later wasn't important. The whole story centred around the idea of him bursting from the cake before raking the wedding party with automatic gunfire. You might have some quirky and off-key ideas and you don't want to invest weeks of preparation getting that world and its characters built up. You've got a fun idea, something you want to see realised, something that keeps rolling around inside your brain pan, a notion that you can't exercise. In this circumstance, a short story might suffice. Short stories can be an outlet to go full pantser. If the idea is simple enough, you can just sit down and write the whole thing out, maybe in one sitting. A lot of plot holes and inconsistencies that come up when writing long-form stories just won't be present in short story writing by virtue of the format. When writing a short story, you don't necessarily have enough page real estate to write yourself into a corner. Reason number 3 you should be writing short fiction is that short stories allow you to experiment. Short stories are less of a commitment for you and your readers. They give you space to explore other genres, to play around with your style, to try new things without committing to a 100,000-word novel. If a short story isn't working the way you want, you can ditch it. If you don't ditch it and you prefer to fix it, it's an easier fix because it's so much shorter. You could easily drop a large portion of the story and rework it into something else if need be. If the story is working exceptionally well, there's nothing stopping you stretching it out into a longer story. You might find you enjoy working in a genre you didn't know you loved. You might find that elusive genre works when you're pumping out short stories. I'm this way with horror. I don't think I have a full-on horror novel in me, no King-esque Needful Things or Tommyknockers, but I know I have dozens of short stories and even a novella or 5. I won't commit 100,000 words on horror, not to the one story, but I'd have no worries writing 10 5,000-word stories or 50 2,000-word stories. Reason number 4 to write short fiction is that by writing short stories you can vastly increase your back catalogue of work. Short stories require less time to plan, write, edit, and less time for the audience to read. If you can pump out a handful of short stories, you are adding significantly to your literary library. This comes with a sense of accomplishment and achievement. You can look at what you've achieved and see that back catalogue and remember, in times when you aren't feeling motivated or in times when you don't feel like you have any right to write. And remember that you did these things. You wrote and you completed these books. You've written a complete story before and you will do it again. This can be an incredible motivator. Reason number 5 to write short fiction is that writing short stories can get you out of a rut. When writing short fiction, you know you aren't expected to perform in the range of 50 to 100,000 words or more. It's freeing to just write as long or short as the story needs. If you're not feeling your current work in progress, consider taking a break and developing an alternate idea, or coming up with some new ones that you can crank out, no matter how rough or raw they are. It might kickstart you out of your procrastination. Another take on this, and it's something that I really like to do, is to write short stories of side characters from your main book or series or current work in progress. In the first book of my upcoming series, The Saint-Denis Mysteries, Moses' best friend, Lewis, returns to the US after years abroad fighting in the Vietnam War. When he and Moses meet up, Lewis mentions that his sister recently died. He doesn't go into great detail, he just says that she OD'd. Being a capable man of action, I figured Lewis wouldn't let that go unanswered. Book 1 of the Saint-Denis Mysteries, titled Born on the Bayou, is just over 100,000 words. I've written a much shorter story that follows Lewis when he first arrives back in the US, where he takes a detour to the mining communities of Kentucky and finds the men who supplied his sister with the drugs that killed her and enacts retribution upon them. It adds to his character development, it adds to the broader mythos of the series, it adds another whole completed story to my catalogue, and it can also act as an email sign-up reward or some other giveaway or bonus. I've also written a story about Vic Carlisle, the dirty cop that first opposes then helps Moses in the main book. Once I finish a few more of these short tales, I can bundle them together into one volume and sell them at a discounted price. People get a little more of the world I'm building without me having to commit to another 100,000-word monster of a book. Reason number 6 to be writing short fiction is that writing short stories can be a palate cleanser. This reason has more than a little overlap with some of the others in this video, but I think it's worth mentioning on its own. If you've been writing in the one genre or the one point of view, the one tense or style for a long period of time and you need a break, you need to reset your brain, switch gears entirely and write something short without fear of failure of commitment, short fiction can do that for you. Been writing fantasy all year? Punch out some gritty street-level crime fare. Been penning YA fiction for months? Maybe challenge yourself to write the events in the day of a very adult relationship. Once again, you might find some genre or topic that you didn't know you liked. If nothing else, it can reset your perspective on your work in progress and allow you to see it with fresh eyes. Reason number 7 to write short stories is that after you've written them, you can sell them. I mentioned there's still a market for short stories. It's not as vigorous as it was in the Penny Dreadful days, but there are still people who prefer and value short stories. I should know, I'm one of them. If you write a bunch of short stories, you can gather them together in a collection. I've heard anecdotal evidence that they don't sell as well, and if you're a once-a-month grinding author, you might not have the time to invest in a collection of short stories that you know won't do as well financially as your regular series. Even still, if you're writing short stories for any of the reasons already mentioned in this video, if you have a collection of them, then why not collect them and sell them in one volume? YouTube has 5-second ads. They know people's attention spans have been greatly reduced in recent years. The sweet spot for YouTube videos is allegedly 10 minutes. Any longer and you lose people. Short and flash fiction has a place in the marketplace, perhaps more so than it has in decades. You could do worse than diversify into it and maybe find some more readers. I know I'm often hesitant to commit to a 400-page epic, part 1 of the Skull, Blood, Blade, Throne Chronicles or something, but another collection of Lovecraftian or cosmic horror stories for $5, that I will buy. I can read a story waiting in the doctor's office or while I'm waiting to pick the kids up from school. I can knock out a story while I'm hiding from the kids on the toilet or just before bed and feel like I've accomplished something, like I've added a new weapon to my mental literary arsenal. Someone who's hesitant to buy into full-length books or series might go for a themed collection of short stories. And you might not just be making a new sale, you might be making a new constant reader, someone who buys everything you write, reviews your work, advertises via word of mouth and champions the cause of you as a writer. All this and the chance to flex your creative muscles and exercise your literary demons in 5,000 words or less. Trust me, you can't afford not to be writing at least some short fiction. So that's my list of why short fiction is not only valuable but necessary to be the best writer you can be. If you've got any thoughts, please comment below. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join me on the next video. Take care.